everyone, this is update for July 27, 2023, day 519 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for July 26. As always, I'm going to start with strategic developments, and then we're going to switch to the situation on the front line in Ukraine. As you can see, the first item is going to be Africa, and actually increasing sphere of influence, Russia's sphere influence in Africa. So what happened, you probably heard that there is a coup in Niger, and I would say I would be surprised and shocked to learn that Wagner Group, basically Russian government, is not behind this coup, but officially it's not. So here are the countries that effectively where Russia has a strong influence at this point. So they effectively control East Libya, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic. Also, few other countries where there is strong influence. I wouldn't say as strong as in those five that I highlighted, but still, Russia is actively building a footprint in the southern Africa with Zimbabwe and Mozambique. They're trying to build it in Congo, in Cameroon, in Ethiopia, and Uganda. The point, and actually Egypt as well. The point of the moves is to effectively deprive West from the resources, and that's and actually exploit the resources and definitely to cover some of the expenses for this all, I would say neo-colonial wars. Just going back to Niger, used to be French colony, so there is a strong French influence effectively there, and Russia is playing this, anti-colonialism game there. Explaining that France is still exploiting Niger and so on. And so that has, when things are not going well in the country, that's enough to, set up unrest and change the power system, which was done. Don't know if it's going to sort of last. It's obviously everything there is very, let's say, flaky and not stable. But for now, Russia got upper hand there. The importance of Niger is that it's fairly large producer of uranium ore. It's producing about 5% of the world production. And if you remember, I mentioned that Russia produces a lot, Kazakhstan produces a lot. So Russia basically gained even more control over supply of uranium on the world market. And in case of France, why it's bad? Because Niger was supplying third of French needs of uranium ore for nuclear power production. So as you can see, that's definitely nothing positive here. Net pretty negative development for France and I would say for Europe as well. Now let's actually switch to the economic data. There was quite a bit of it. I haven't discussed the last video, so I want to catch up on that. So first of all, you probably heard that Germany is going deeper, I would say, underground with its manufacturing. The PMI went to 38.8, which is pretty terrible number. So just to explain the meaning of this number. So below 50 is expansion. Sorry, above 50 is expansion. Below 50 is contraction. So as you can imagine, it's pretty severe contraction going on in the manufacturing in Germany. But this is all a result of the internal misguided policies I mentioned before. This war on conventional energy. That's a result of it. And it will continue as long as this war will continues in Germany, and effectively, I would say Germany will self-destruct if it continues on its path. Also, another important and negative development is the services also started to go down as well, and coming closer to 50. It's still in positive territory, 52. And services are usually very sticky. They rarely go. It's you really try to hard to push services into negative territory because it includes like everyday services that everyday everybody uses them. So they are less cyclical. Let's put this way. So, and that they're going in negative direction is quite worrying sign as well. So, as a whole, it's together this paints pretty ugly picture in Germany. Now let's switch to the U.S. Here in the U.S. is we can see that the job market remains pretty strong in the U.S. As you can see, this continuing jobless claims actually even went down. Initial went down. So I wouldn't say everything's perfect, but on the surface, the job market is strong, and that's really the driver of U.S. Economy because all of these jobs they turn into consumer, and consumption is about 70% of the U.S. GDP. So as long as the job market remains strong in the U.S., it will hold everything else basically in the U.S. I'm not talking, but in the U.S. it will hold everything else because manufacturing in the U.S. is small, portion of GDP. And remember, it's like definitely less than 15%. It's probably could be around 10%. So it's negative manufacturing numbers don't really not as bad for the U.S. because it's a smaller share of the economy. Because most of the manufacturing, as everybody understands, is outsourced elsewhere, and including China. Uh, then also we see that GDP is growing in the U.S. It's annualized on the annualized rate 2.4%. So that's I would say is result of the strong job market. So again, and it also supports the housing market, and then that in turn supports everything else because as long as there are jobs, people can afford to have houses. So things basically remain. Remain stable. I wouldn't say everything's perfect, but it's not deteriorating to the level that what's happening in, let's say, Europe and in particular Germany. Also, there are first signs of the positive signs in the manufacturing in the US. So you see that PMI went from 46 to 49, so in a positive direction, still in contraction. But don't know if this is sort of one off, and again, we'll see trend over time, or this is some kind of positive developments, and maybe this narrative about manufacturing renaissance will be true. We'll find out in a month or two. But so far, we clearly see there is a change in the trend, and it's moving in a positive direction. At the same time, services is actually going into negative direction, and that's big negative for the U.S. because I explained that U.S. is its consumption, it's a lot of it is services. So that's it's almost like elephant. That's the most actually important part for the U.S. and as I said before, the fact that it's going down almost 2 points, and also that usually it's very not cyclical. It's just again sticky. It's not a good sign. I would say it's pretty big bad sign. At the same time, it's just U.S. is kind of like a basket case. Some as you can see, some things are going okay, some things are going pretty bad. So, well, no, I would say no clear picture is probably the best description of the situation there. Also, want to mention that the Federal Reserve or U.S. Central Bank increased interest rates by 0.25% to 5.5%. Also in Europe, they went up by 0.25 to 4.25. And looking at this job situation, if the things will remain the same in, let's say, August in the U.S., the U.S. central bank probably will increase interest rates one more time in September, on September 20th, when they meet. If the trend continues the way it goes, that's probably will be on the table. Let's look at a little bit few more economies. First of all, if we look at which one is let's just look at the European Union as a whole, because it sort of basically encompasses everything. I mentioned Germany, but sort of Germany and other countries there. So as a whole, manufacturing kind of remains steady, but in negative territory in European Union. It's not thanks to Germany, but which is a very interesting development, because usually Germany is a manufacturing sort of center, manufacturing powerhouse in Europe, and yet it's being able to hold on to manufacturing, not thanks to Germany, basically, despite Germany. Also, services painting the same negative picture. It's going to 51.1. As I said, 50 is threshold between contraction and expansion. Also, slowdown in general in lending in Europe, and basically money supply growth is slowing down. So all this means that the growth will be continuing to slow down in Europe, and may lead to some recession. Let's move actually, and then quickly the French PMIs, manufacturing PMI, also painting actually ugly picture, as you can see here, going down to 44.5 from 46. Not as bad as German one. So again, France and Germany are not sort of what sort of keeps European manufacturing afloat. Actually, I don't know where what's going on beyond that, but from this picture it is very clear that they are not the source of the strengths there. Now let's quickly go over the updated information on our financial situation in the US. So the M2 money supply growth, actually it kind of ticked up a little bit, so which will help to keep things more stable in general in the economy and financial system, and the job market in the US. So things remain contained. I would say this way. And actually, let's look a little bit more the stress in banking system. You can see again that things are not sort of resolved, but they are contained, and also the sign that things are, I would say, not resolved, but managed very well, is the example that I think yesterday there was a U.S. bank, I think PacWest or something like that, that was acquired by Bank of California, which is smaller. It's very clear that this is sort of prearranged acquisition, where basically the governmental authorities, regulators, effectively forced this PacWest to be acquired by a smaller bank, and PacWest was another troubled bank similar to SVB and so on. So basically, it was on its way out, and in this case, it was I would say very masterfully done in terms of there is no another bankruptcy, but actually it was just acquired, and sort of things to extent things were sort of swept under the rug, and was sort of taken very well by the market. The investors didn't sort of pay attention that this is a problem, but except this problem was masterfully covered up, and it looks all very natural, and everything's went well. At the same time, as I said before, as long as interest rates remain high, and actually they are going higher in the U.S., the banks will become more and more, troubled. But because, as I said before, that just for those who haven't watched those videos, the logic is very simple: is that uh, banks, not just in the U.S., everywhere where it was low interest rates, they lend money at very low interest rates, like let's say 3%, 4% at most. So on their loans, they earning 3 to 4% the interest rate that they charge, and now they need to pay to their depositors, let's say 5.5%, given this recent raise. And as you can imagine, 5.5 is higher than, let's say, 4. So you're losing money in your business. So basically, you are money losing operation as a whole banking system in the U.S. Right? So it's not just, there are weaker links such as this PacWest, and the other banks before it, whatever. I even forgot the name, SVB, Silvergate, and something else. But the whole point is the banking, the let's say, the big problem is still there. It didn't go anywhere, and we'll see what's going to happen as things will unravel going forward. But for now, everything is looking contained, and as I said before, as long as the job market jobs are still there in the U.S., things probably will hold on for some time. Also, if we look at this interest rate, it's also kind of going nowhere, sideways, which again means things are contained. Now let's switch to the situation closer to Ukraine, although not quite closer. I actually will mention a little bit Indonesia, but first, let's talk a little bit about Ukraine and Ukrainian grain export and all of those ports. And in the last video, I forgot to say that there is no way um, to export Ukrainian grain except through the ports, because otherwise it's too expensive. The problem with this agricultural exports that they are very low value add, and so you can the only way to make it sort of viable and competitive, you have to ship them through the sea, because sea and river transportation are the cheapest way to transport everything from point A to B. And so that's a reason that all of the bulk stuff goes around the world, as long as, if it's possible, obviously, through the ocean and sea, and then the next one is railway. But railway much more expensive, and as I said, there is no way Ukraine can export competitively uh, through Europe. And since Russia is basically severely damaged, I don't know to what extent, if it's completely damaged or let's say 70-80% damage level of Ukrainian ports, it effectively means Ukraine cannot export grain. There might be some small exports and so on. If prices really go up on the world market, Ukraine may export. They not going up. The reaction of the world market is just the world market feels that there is enough ample supply, or at least, and by supply I mean it's matched with demand that can pay for it. Basically, I'm not, there's always infinite demand for everything, but when I'm talking about this situation, it's relative to the supply that has money to pay for it, which is real. Sorry, demand. I meant to use the word demand. As long as in very simple way, as long as people have money to pay for it, then that's a real demand. The rest is just illusion of demand. And so it doesn't seem there is enough demand in the world market. So even let's say taking out Ukraine, which was very sizable exporter, didn't really move that much international grain market. And as I said before, and so just to confirm what I was trying to say before, is European Union officials said, okay, we don't have money to subsidize Ukrainian export by, using European rail network, and then shipping it through the ports out of Europe, because that's going to be very expensive. And so the very clear answer, a very logical answer, it doesn't make sense, any kind of sense. It's easier than just to simply give money to Ukraine, than exercise, do this, useless exercise of exporting Ukrainian grains. Um, so, but and so again, going back to this, Ukrainian hryvnia actually went down, dipped on this news quite a bit, about close to 1 hryvnia, because it's obviously was, as I said before, one last remaining viable source of value add of foreign currency in Ukraine, and now it's effectively destroyed. Now let's switch a little bit to Russia. Actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about Wagner Group. So it looks like what I said before, that this whole June 24th, I think, all of that, it was all just show. The head of Wagner Group was seen during the Africa Russia summit in St. Petersburg. He was sort of quite prominent there. And Russian president was there. So that's not what happens when someone trying to do the coup and runs away and so on. So this is very clear. It was a stage show. We'll find out probably within a month or two what was the real sort of intent behind that show. But it's becoming very clear that Wagner Group is well and alive, and sort of kind of hidden, but not really hidden. It's very clear that they just moved to Belarus, where, as I said before, it looks like there will be some attempt to do some daring things there. We'll find out eventually. The other situation, the other development in Russia is, which is very interesting, is that Russian Minister of Defense, with whom actually Wagner Group is probably at odds still on the personal level, that he actually prohibited members of Russian Parliament and basically senior officials to visit war zone. So basically, kind of under his tight control. That's just generally not good development in terms of, I would say it looks like he's trying to hide something, right? So things are not perfect, and he doesn't want parliament members to kind of go there, poke the holes, and see what's going on there. Related to this Russian Africa summit is that the strategy that Russia is using is essentially pitting developing countries against the West, saying that, okay, you're still being exploited by the West. It's neocolonialism, and we're going to help you to liberate yourself from neocolonialism. It's very interesting case in the case of Indonesia, which is obviously not part of Africa, but this is just general Russia strategy around the world in its foreign relationship. The same is being pushed in Latin America, elsewhere around the world. And in case of Indonesia is somewhat sort of, how to say, to extend supports Russia, or at least there is a silent support, and actually there is a strong popular support of Russia's war against Ukraine in Indonesia. And we can see how it's all economically connected. So what Indonesia is doing, Indonesia is very gifted in natural resources, specifically non-ferrous metals that are actually critical. So one is being nickel, which I think they have 22% of the world deposits, which is, and nickel is very important, especially for the batteries, and with all of this push to um, call it alternative energy, it's becoming even more critical. Then they have bauxite, which is mineral that's used to make aluminum. Then they have tin. Then they have copper, which is copper is also very important. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of important metals that's or let's say minerals that are mined there to produce later to be refined and produce metals. And so what Indonesia is trying to do is actually stop being exporter of the minerals and actually refine those ores and smelt, become a producer of metal in the country. And so, and as you can see, and that goes at odds with, let's say, European Union, that's buying a lot of these minerals from Indonesia, and so it's a natural, like kind of like economic clash where Indonesia wants to basically go up the value added ladder, which is natural and I would say normal development, and that pits it against the West, let's put it this way. And Russia is sort of siding and sort of helping countries like Indonesia in terms of siding with Indonesia and supporting them. And in this way, it's just um, it's where it's becoming, you know, it's a normal and fair desire of Indonesia to actually uh, how to say process all of these ores in country and earn more money. That's just, I would say, totally normal. But and it could be sort of normal and resolvable sort of relationship with, let's say, European Union in this situation. However, Russia is trying to basically use these tensions to its advantage, and at the same, as I said, the same being done in Africa, the same being done in Latin America, the same being done with India, and so on. So that's the essence of sort of Russia's foreign policy, and that's what's going on there. Now let's switch to the situation on the front line in Ukraine. I'm gonna do walkthrough in a clockwise fashion, starting from the very north. Situation along the state border remains more or less the same. No major changes or differences there. Uh, if I go to actual front line, I want to say that Ukrainian forces started new offensive attempt. It started on 26. It was as unsuccessful as the previous attempt that was done, let's say, started on June 4th and lasted for several days. I don't know exact day when it sort of stopped, but let's say till June 7th or something like that, or 9. Um, but the whole point is it's no lessons learned, the same mistakes, the same, poor organization, poor command, poor training, poor everything, and that results in the same result. It's almost like definition of insanity, right? Repeat the same thing and expect different result, and that's just really unfortunately what's been going on with this so-called offensive, because in a true meaning it doesn't even qualify as really offensive. It's not done, it's done so improperly that's you cannot even call offensive. I'll sort of discuss a little more in detail once we get to that section of the front line. Let's first jump to the North Lugansk. Things here are more or less sort of somewhat stabilized after, I mentioned this Russian pushes, which were just tactical in nature. It's not another major offensive here. It's just, again, tactical fights here, and I would say nothing really major is happening here. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line. I'm actually gonna jump. It's fairly quiet here, only tactical fights, and the only place where there is a still very brutal fighting, I would say, and with the significant losses to both sides, is in this southern south of Bahmut, in this area from Klishchiyivka south to Kurdyumivka. Ukrainian troops effectively liberated half of Klishchiyivka. There's also a small tiny village Andriivka here. Looks like it's either gray zone or also liberated by Ukrainian troops. Russian side is still controlling northern part of Klishchiyivka. But again, this is where I said before that it's kind of work in progress for Ukrainian side, and eventually Ukrainian forces will sort of fully liberate these two villages, and it wouldn't mean much. It's just a tactical victory. Both sides will pay a very heavy human toll price for this sort of fight, because there is indication that Russian forces under severe stress there, and have heavy losses. But it's not a breach in the Russian defensive. It's simply a tactical victory, and doesn't lead to anything strategic at this point. Now let's look at central Donbass front lines. Here are sort of stable, which they essentially stable, which is, I think most people don't realize, it's the most stable section of the front line since the beginning of the war, with this exception of this small salients that Russian troops managed to build. It's, as I said, it's the most stable. It's essentially front line hasn't changed since February 24, 2022. And again, no changes today either. Some Russian attacks that don't go anywhere. Now let's switch to actually to the Zaporizhia front line, where Ukrainian command decided to do another round of attacks. So on the 26th there was an attack here, kind of like a little bit east of Robotyne. Again, the same disastrous outcome. A lot of equipment lost. The same, like, if you look at it, like everything is done wrong. It's like how it's not supposed to be done, and so the outcome is sort of expected. No breach of the Russian defensive line. Some dents there, but really don't don't mean anything. Then let's actually look at this sort of move a little bit towards east. This Velyka Novosilka salient used to be, now it's no longer. Here there's success by Ukrainian forces. They liberated this village Staromayorsk, and I mentioned about this before a long time ago, when the initial attack started on June 4th, that this is the next sort of low-hanging fruit for Ukrainian side, and it actually will come together with this village Urozhaina. So if you remember, so that's why I just pulled this map from when I showed it last on June 25th. So now Staromayorsk is liberated, and Urozhaina is going to be essentially will follow, because you cannot really hold this village if Staromayorsk is in Ukrainian hands. So it's sort of, again, small tactical victory, nothing major. basically very expensive squeeze of Russian forces that doesn't lead to anything. And just for the reference, the main Russian defense, it starts somewhere behind Staromlinivka. This village you see here, it starts somewhere over there. So again, Ukrainian forces didn't even reach the main defensive line here in this area, Russian defensive line. Okay, now let's switch to the last section of the front line, which is along Dnipro River. Things here are quiet, no major action. Status quo remains. Small Ukrainian bridgeheads, and no attempts by Russian side to destroy those. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time.